August 9, 2019. Loxahatchee, Florida. A peaceful cul-de-sac just before dawn. The neighborhood was still asleep when the call came in. 911, what's your emergency? The voice on the other end was steady, almost too steady. I shot him. He was trying to hurt me. The woman on the phone was 44-year-old Marcia Thompson, a U.S. Customs agent, a mother, a wife. When officers arrived, she stood in the doorway, wearing her uniform, her badge pinned neatly, her hands raised. Inside the home, on the living room floor, was her husband, Terry Thompson, shot multiple times. He never stood a chance. The couple's 2 children were asleep in the next room, just feet away from the scene. Neighbors stepped outside, drawn by the flashing lights. They watched silently as deputies surrounded the home. Crime tape rose under the Florida sun. Marcia surrendered without a struggle. She said nothing, except to ask about her kids. But this was no open and shut case. Because as investigators looked closer, the story began to shift. Marcia wasn't crying. There were no marks on her body. No broken glass. No sign of a struggle. Terry had been lying on the couch. A pillow, a blanket, and his laptop by his side. And yet, 9 bullets. 2 from the front, 6 to the back. One truth impossible to ignore. He never got off the couch. The gun Marcia used? Her service weapon. She placed it carefully on top of the refrigerator before police arrived. In her own words, he said he'd end me if I left that room. She claimed fear. They claimed murder. And so began one of the most debated cases in Palm Beach County history. A trained officer, a dead husband, and a question that still divides the public today. Was it self-defense? Or something far more chilling? Gainesville, Florida. The year, 2000. A college campus buzzing with ambition and promise. That's where Marcia first saw him. She was just 20 years old, focused, disciplined, training to serve her country as a customs officer. He was 33, older, charming, with a confidence that drew people in. His name was Terry Thompson. They met at the University of Florida. The connection was fast, strong, and to many, surprising. Friends remember it clearly. They looked perfect together. He made her feel special. And in those early days he did. Late-night phone calls, weekend trips, long-distance letters between training assignments. She used her time off to visit him. Terry would say he couldn't sleep without hearing her voice. In 2007 he proposed. She said yes. And together they planned a life full of promise. In August 2008 they were married. A beach ceremony. Smiling photos. Vows whispered under the open sky. On paper it was everything Marcia had ever wanted. Security. Well, a future. But love can be deceiving. And paper can hide the truth. Behind closed doors, Terry's charm began to change. What once sounded like concern became control. He had opinions about her clothes, her friends, her job. And slowly Marcia adjusted. To keep the peace. He told her she was lucky to have him. That no one else would ever understand her. That she needed him more than he needed her. But she still believed in the man she met. The one who said she made him whole. So she stayed. She tried harder. Even as the words got sharper. Even as the silence between them grew colder. They bought a home. They had children. And still, she hoped. But fairy tales aren't written with bruises. Or accusations. And some love stories age like vinegar. Because the man who once swept her off her feet would later be the reason she stood trial. In Gainesville they began a journey together. But no one could have predicted where that journey would end. In the beginning, it was easy to believe. Terry Thompson wasn't perfect. But love forgives small flaws. Or so Marcia thought. The man who once made her laugh began watching her more closely. Asking questions. Making comments that felt more like warnings. Who were you talking to? Why'd it take you so long to get home? That blouse, it's too much. He told her it was only because he cared. That the world was full of bad people. That he just wanted to protect her. But protection turned into control. He dictated her clothes. Questioned her colleagues. Tracked her time. And always apologized later. It started with little things. She'd find her phone missing. He'd show up unannounced. He'd say, "You left it out. I was just checking." And slowly the Marcia her friends knew began to fade. Gaslighting. Jealousy. Surveillance disguised as love. He accused her of things she hadn't done. Said she was ungrateful. Said she was lucky he stayed. She stopped wearing makeup. Stopped talking at work. Stopped arguing back. You know I only get like this because I love you. You made me do this. And then, the pushing began. A bruise on her shoulder. A twisted wrist. A pulled muscle she blamed on a fall. Medical reports described chronic neck pain. Stress injuries. But Marcia never explained the real cause. Her diary, later found hidden in a shoebox, spoke volumes. One page read, "If I vanish, it wasn't an accident. He said he'd end me. I think he means it this time." Friends noticed the change. But when they asked, she smiled. "Just tired," she'd say. "It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. The cracks were showing. Behind the doors of a quiet home in Loxahatchee, the story was changing. This wasn't a marriage anymore. It was survival. And each day, Marcia Thompson woke up hoping it would be better, praying it wouldn't be worse, because love had become something else, something darker. And what began as a fairy tale was now unraveling into a silent, invisible nightmare. A marriage built on fear is just a cage, and inside that cage lived 2 children and a mother walking on glass. From the outside, the Thompson house looked like any other. A cozy home in a quiet Florida suburb. The lawn was trimmed, the fence freshly painted, a refrigerator filled with snacks, a couch that faced the morning sun. But behind those walls, something else lived there too. Silence, heavy and cold. Words sharp like broken glass. And footsteps that children learned to tiptoe around. Marcia Thompson did her best. She packed lunches. She read bedtime stories. She wore her uniform with pride. But each day began the same, with her husband's voice echoing through the rooms. "Where are you going dressed like that? You think I don't know what you're up to? You're nothing without me." The kids heard it all. They saw the tension, felt it in the floorboards, even in the way their mother flinched when their father entered a room. One neighbor would later say, "We heard yelling, all hours, sometimes crying, but you never saw anything from the outside." And that's how fear works. It's quiet. It hides behind closed blinds and polite waves at the mailbox. Marcia stopped inviting people over, stopped answering texts, stopped smiling in photos. She wasn't just keeping peace. She was keeping her children safe. A small golf club leaned against the wall near the couch. A machete tucked away in the bedroom. Another weapon locked inside a safe. And her service gun, always by her side. The refrigerator, spotless and cold, would later hold more than food. It would hold the tool that changed everything. The children, just 6 and 7, learned how to stay quiet. How to pretend they didn't hear. How to disappear when voices got loud. Behind the picket fence stood a family barely holding together. And on this night, something would snap. Because even the strongest cages rust over time. And when fear lives too long in a home, eventually something breaks. August 8, 2019. Evening settles over Loxahatchee. The sky darkens. The house grows quiet. Marcia Thompson finishes putting her children to bed. 2 small voices, now silent behind closed doors. She's exhausted. Her shift at the Port of Palm Beach starts early. The alarm is already set. But her phone begins to ring. It's Terry. What starts as a check-in turns into an interrogation. 1 call becomes 2, then 3, then more. The words get louder. Accusations sharper. "You think I don't know what you're doing? You think you can lie to me?" For hours, the conversation spirals. Anger on one end, pleas for calm on the other. By the time Marcia drifts into sleep, it's past 3 a.m. She gets 2 hours of rest. Then, headlights in the driveway. Terry is home. The yelling starts before the door opens. Neighbors later said they heard voices, but thought it was just another fight. It wasn't. He berated her from the driveway, from the door, from the living room couch. Marcia, in the bedroom, begins preparing for work. She puts on her uniform, fastens her duty belt, slides her service weapon into its holster. She doesn't yell back. She's learned not to. But his voice doesn't stop. "You think I'm playing? You think this is a game?" And then, his final warning. "If you come out of that room, I'll kill you." It was a line he had crossed before. But this time, something felt different. Colder. Closer. Marcia stands in silence. A uniformed officer. A mother. A woman with nowhere left to go. She opens the door. Moments later, 9 shots ring out. The man who promised to love her, now silent on the floor. A blanket, a pillow, a laptop by his side. For years, Marcia tried to survive the storm inside her home. But that morning, she made a choice. And when she did, nothing in her world would ever be the same again. When the shots stopped, silence filled the home. Marcia Thompson stood in her kitchen, still in uniform. Her service weapon, now resting on top of the refrigerator. She made one call. "I shot him. He was trying to kill me." Deputies arrived within minutes. Inside the living room, Terry Thompson lay face down, unmoving. A blanket still draped over his legs. A laptop on the floor beside him. He had been wearing only his underwear. Crime scene technicians got to work. Photographs, measurements, evidence markers. 9 shell casings, all .40 caliber, lined the wall. The first 2 bullets struck Terry in the chest. Then 6 more to his back. Each shot fired after he had already fallen. Not a single round missed. Forensic experts would later say the pattern was tight, deliberate. Each wound clean. Each shot fatal. There was no gun in his hand. No knife under the cushions. No object near the body that could be used to strike. Only a pillow. A couch. A life, now gone. They checked under the furniture. They searched the room top to bottom. No signs of a struggle. No broken glass. No overturned chairs. The only item disturbed was Terry's body. When lifted beneath him, they found just a cell phone. And the same laptop he had used to watch videos the night before. A bullet-resistant vest was found at the far end of the couch. But it had never been touched. The detectives asked the question no one could yet answer. Was this panic? Was it premeditated? Or was it an act of survival? Marcia claimed fear. That Terry had threatened her again. That she believed he would finally carry it out. But the evidence raised doubts. Could a man lying down, covered in a blanket, truly pose an immediate danger? The state called it murder. The defense called it protection. 2 truths, 1 story, and 9 bullets that would speak louder than any witness ever could. 2024. 5 years after the gunfire stopped in a quiet Florida living room, the courtroom doors finally opened. State of Florida versus Marcia Thompson. The trial would last just 6 days, but what it uncovered would leave lasting questions. Jury selection was tense. Media crews lined the courthouse steps. Each headline asked the same thing. Was this self-defense or a planned killing? Inside the courtroom, Marcia Thompson sat motionless, wearing a simple black dress. Her children, now older, watched from the back row. The prosecution didn't waste time. She had 15 minutes to calm down. They said, 15 minutes to change her mind. Instead, she dressed, loaded her weapon, and pulled the trigger. They pointed to the crime scene, to the blanket, to the laptop, to the 9 bullets. They called it premeditation. They said she wasn't afraid. She was just tired of the man who mocked her. But the defense had a different story. A longer one. She didn't have 15 minutes of peace. They argued. She had 15 years of torment. They painted a picture of a woman slowly broken down. By words. By threats. By fear. A forensic psychologist took the stand. She explained post-traumatic stress. She described the toll of living in constant survival mode. She had learned the signs. The doctor said. She knew what was coming. Battered woman syndrome. PTSD. Fear, embedded so deeply that even silence became a warning. 2 stories. Same facts. Very different meanings. The state showed timelines. Photos. Bullet paths. They said Marcia knew what she was doing. The defense showed pain. Bruises hidden in medical reports. A diary no one had ever read. They said she was trying to live. 2 truths. 1 courtroom. And a jury forced to decide what fear really looks like. Was Marcia Thompson protecting her children? Or silencing a man she no longer loved? The law would ask for evidence. But the jury would be asked to feel. Because not every truth comes with proof. And not every threat comes with a weapon. The courtroom grew quiet as Marcia Thompson's past came into view. Not just her past, but his. One by one, the witnesses stepped forward. Her grandmother, her brother, close friends. Each carried stories, quiet memories they had once buried. Phone calls at midnight. Voices raised over the line. Moments where something felt wrong. Her brother recalled the threats. He said if she ever left, he'd come for all of us. Her grandmother remembered a prayer. After Terry told her Marcia had been seeing other men. It wasn't true. But the fear was real. Then came the woman no one expected. Teresa. Terry's former girlfriend. A different home. A different chapter. But the same ending. She testified about his anger. About his accusations. And about a moment when she too held a knife. To defend herself. He told me, she said, You'll never find them all. He meant the blades, hidden in couch cushions, tucked behind doors, stashed throughout the home. Control, rage, knives just out of reach. Different women, same story. Each detail matched the world Marcia had described. A life filled with silence, fear, and preparation. Teresa said he once smiled as he yelled, that the calmer he looked, the more dangerous he became. None of this changed the crime scene, but it shifted the meaning behind it. Was Terry Thompson a man caught off guard, or a man who had spent years planting fear into every room? The jury listened, watched, took notes, not just about what was said, but how it was said, how the witnesses' voices cracked when they spoke his name, and how none of them seemed surprised that he was gone. It wasn't just a trial about a moment, it had become a trial about a pattern, one that stretched years, and across lives. Because sometimes the clearest picture of who someone is doesn't come from one story, it comes from many, told by different voices, that all sound the same. August 2024, 6 days of testimony, countless exhibits, and one impossible decision. The jury had heard it all. The threats, the bruises, the bullets. They had seen the photos, heard the 911 call, watched as two lives unraveled in slow motion. Now, after just 4 hours behind closed doors, they returned. The courtroom fell still. Not a cough, not a whisper, only the sound of the clerk, and 12 lives about to speak. In the circuit court of the 15th Judicial Circuit, we the jury find the defendant not guilty. Gasps echoed. A sob. Then silence again. Marcia Thompson dropped her head. Her hands covered her face. She didn't move, until two small arms wrapped around her waist. Her children, now older, stronger, ran to her side. They hadn't lived under the same roof in 5 years. Now, they held on and didn't let go. Tears fell. Not just hers, but from jurors, and even courtroom staff. Some cried for relief. Others, for reasons still unclear. Was it justice? Or something else? Had the law seen a battered woman who feared for her life? Or a tired soul who had simply had enough? The prosecution stood in silence. No motion. No sound. They had never offered a deal. Never backed down. But now, their case was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Headlines already writing themselves. Officer acquitted in husband's shooting. Jury believes abuse claims. But inside the walls of that small courtroom, there was no celebration. Only breath. And stillness. Because no verdict could erase what happened that morning. No decision could bring him back. Or undo the fear that led to the trigger. For Marcia Thompson, the law didn't just set her free. Finally listened. And for the first time in years, she didn't have to defend herself. Not to a partner. Not to the public. Not anymore. The courtroom doors closed. But for Marcia Thompson, the journey was far from over. Released from house arrest, she returned to the place where it all began. The same house. The same walls. But nothing felt the same. The couch had been replaced. The refrigerator emptied. But memory doesn't leave so easily. Her children came home. Older now. Wiser in ways they shouldn't have to be. Therapy sessions became part of the routine. So did long walks. And quiet meals without fear. Neighbors still watched. Some with sympathy. Others with judgment. But for the Thompsons, healing had to begin somewhere. Marcia kept her head down. She didn't talk to the cameras. Didn't answer questions outside the courthouse. Until one quiet interview. In a chair. With tears held back by force, not absence. We're healing, she said. But the past still whispers. Some nights she still woke up at 3 a.m. The time Terry came home. The time her voice shook on the phone. The time everything changed. She didn't call herself a victim. Or a hero. Just a mother, trying to rebuild a life. Vacations. Holidays spent smiling even when smiles were hard to find. But behind each picture, there is silence. There is loss. Not every story ends with peace. Not every family heals the same way. Some wounds close quietly. Others leave marks that never fade. A family shattered. A woman judged. A system tested. And one morning, that changed everything forever. For some, justice was served. For others, it slipped through the cracks. But for Marcia Thompson, the mother, the officer, the survivor, the story doesn't end with a verdict. It ends with a choice. To keep going. To forgive. To live. And sometimes, that's the hardest choice of all.